I often get asked, what is the Holy Human Initiative all about? What do the tools look like? So this video is designed to tell you all of them that I can as quickly as possible. And if you wanted to, you could even use just this video to get started right away. So those are our goals. And in order to start us off, I think I have to go all the way back to the beginning. And the beginning would be, what if when we came here, when we entered the skin suit, this existence, what if there were certain absolutes, certain birthrights? Things like, we have the right to live in peace and joy. We have the right to come here and be creators and be a representative of the source energy that created us. Source, God, divine intelligence, however you'd like to say that. What if that was what we were supposed to do here? So if that sounds pretty good and you're with me, now the question is, why aren't a lot of us feeling like we have that we can do that? So we have a few answers as far as how that can come together. One of the first ones would be, well, when we come from source energy, from God, and we come from that clear place, that complete clarity, brilliant white light, however you want to picture it, clear, almost invisible, and we come into a skin suit, now we're in a dense place. So it's more dense. So we talk about that idea of density and clarity and how just the difference between that makes us forget a lot. So we get here and we get the skin suit, and we might not necessarily remember all of that. And we also, along the way, might get taught things that take us further and further away from living a lifestyle that would be what we call wholly human. So as we look at that piece of it, as far as the idea of clarity and density, and it's not about one or the other, there's a middle ground, neutrality, then we start to think about, well, okay, if I come from this place of divine intelligence, well, shouldn't I always still be connected to it? So we talk about that idea of intelligence and how we're always hooked up to intelligence, which is going to be different than the intellect. So the intellect is all of the knowledge that we've stored, all of the learning we've done, all of the experiences we've had. And when we think about, well, which one's more helpful, direct connection to source or a database of experiences, it's a trick question. Really, we want both of them here. It's just now the question of, am I balancing it out? Am I using both? When I get information from either place, am I interpreting it to the best of my ability? Now, that's where this gets a little bit tricky, because a lot of the time our interpretation gets clouded by the emotions that either we're feeling at the time or that we are still carrying. So when I say still carrying, a lot of us within our skin suit feel like, well, a lot of the time we feel stressed out. We feel like we're constantly running. Maybe we don't always feel safe and secure, or we don't always feel connected. So the question is, well, why? How did that happen? So the answer that we would propose for that is most of us live in this state of imbalance between essentially the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system, which is a fancy way of saying our bodies are typically on that mode of alert, alert, alert. Something's about to happen. That kind of a system, instead of being in a more calm and confident, secure place. So think about those two different things. Think about the last time you were kind of scattered. You were in a tizzy and something went wrong and you just couldn't necessarily see the right answer. And a friend said, hey, wait, did you try this, this, and this? And you're like, oh, I didn't even remember that was an option. Well, not surprising, because your routing wasn't necessarily supporting your logical and rational connection to your intellect. And it was probably getting in the way of your connection to intelligence as well. So what do we do about that? Well, we have the reset breath, which is a very simple and quick breathing technique that's going to offer your body an opportunity to pause and reset between those two systems. Add that to a circuit that we can create just with the electromagnetic energy of our hands that we call quiet touch. That invites your body to start signaling and transmitting to itself, hey, I'm safe. We're all cool. It's safe. So put those two together, and now you have a different basis for how you're going to be thinking through things and interpreting that information. So we work with the whole idea of the body matters. What's going on in the body is going to help or hinder what's going on in the mind, and also what's going on with that spiritual connection. Now, as I say those three things, that's actually a huge point of what we do, is we base everything off of what we call the trivector. The trivector is the idea that all three of those points, intelligence creates body or form, form creates mind and intellect as well as body are always seeking that connection back home. Now, that doesn't mean returning to the clear ether. It means here, within this body, within this skin suit, how can I have that connection back to home? So that's the trivector. And we really do like to look at this holistically of, if my body's calm and my mind's calm, hey, guess what? It's a whole lot easier for me to feel that sense of connection. And also, of course, there's great side effects with that. I feel happier. I almost feel like I'm guided to be in the right places at the right time, and things come together much more easily for me, which is very cool. So we've talked so far about a few of the concepts that get us there in the body part. We didn't talk yet about the mind. So with the mind, and actually before I go too deep into the mind, let's just think about the whole idea of trivector. When we look at the trivector and we're trying to deconstruct what's going on around us, we have something called the 3 R's. So our 3 R's is, first, we have to recognize, hey, wait, something's off. Hey, wait, I need to dig into. So I recognize what's happening. And then I want to reconcile. Okay, let me deconstruct this. Because of this, am I noticing a pattern here? What's going on here? And I can reconcile. And then my 3rd R with that is resolve. So based on what I find throughout this whole pattern, that will get me to the other side of either deconstructing past choices I've made in order to not repeat my same patterns, or also it helps me deconstruct whatever's going on in the moment. So both of those things, I believe, give us more clear forward motion. So if I can clean up the past and I, make good, clear decisions in the present, that smooths out what's going to happen in the future. Now, I mentioned the tie-in between those two of the trivector and the triple R's. The reason I did that is sometimes when I recognize, oh wait, something feels off here. Maybe you have a little swoop of anxiety in your stomach. So you have that little swoop, I recognize. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is, all right, is this a body thing? Is this something my mind is feeding me? Or is this an intelligence? Is something trying to get my attention from that energetic or vibrational standpoint? So as I'm digging into the triple R's, that's why I consider it our universal overarching tool. Because the first thing we need to do is recognize, and there's a few different ways that recognition can go. And then based off of that, I reconcile and I resolve. Now, when I talk about reconcile, I started to go into the idea of reconciling the mind. We have a few tools for that. So one of the things is with my example there, feel that swoop of anxiety. Oh no, now what? Well, maybe I'm telling myself a story that's freaking me out for really no reason. So at least mine are usually no reason. Sometimes there might be a reason, but a lot of the time, the stories we're telling ourselves aren't so productive. So we have something called thoughts, words, and actions. And then also, what vibration do those 3 create? And what viewpoint are all of those based on? So by looking at our viewpoints, which then our thoughts, words, and actions are created upon, and all of that's putting out a vibration, what is that bringing to me? So that's a tool that helps us reconcile, get to the bottom of something. Another tool that will help us reconcile is digging into what we call personas. Personas are simply a set of behaviors that I would use or anyone would use as a way to get things done in this reality, in this landscape. So when we first start to talk about personas, we recommend people start to think about, okay, well, I have a parent persona. I have a professional persona. So recognize which personas and which hats you wear within life. But then it gets really interesting when you start to look for patterns and you notice, well, wait a second, maybe across all these personas, I'm a planner and I'm always planning. And I actually kind of resent that. And I don't really like doing that. People just expect me to do it now or whatever it is. I mean, once we start to dig into these things, then we can identify, okay, well, what is the set of behaviors that I'm using right now? And how is that either contributing to my success or possibly making me feel this discomfort that got me in this mess in the first place? So we look at what we call personas and the difference between those personas and then what you would consider your true core soul personality. Usually personas are a piece of you, but not necessarily that true you. So we think about, okay, well, what's the difference? Who are you? And we roll that back. And then one of the other tools that we have for the mind has to do with what we call the ping pong ball. So the ping pong ball does go back and forth and back and forth. It's an analogy that represents that motion. And really, it's just an analogy that suggests usually when we're trying to decide between things, then we have this, I think a lot of us have bought into this idea of duality, of I have essentially two main choices. Do I leave this relationship or do I stay? Do I move to that city or do I move to this city? So I'm not saying we only ever have two options, but a lot of us get caught up in the idea of should I go or not, should I go or not, or whatever your thing is. So the ping pong ball helps us deconstruct, well, okay, what are my two options? And how do each of them support me from a true soul personality and purpose standpoint? And how can I use that to maybe not even pick either one of these and find something that's essentially off of the ping pong table and a totally different third point? So as I'm talking through all of these things, I hope one thing that came out repeatedly, even though I don't think I've said the word yet, is the idea of choice. At any of these different pieces, I always have a choice. My choices got me to where I am today. Based on where I am today, how am I choosing to move forward? So all of these little layers of micro choices, that's going to shape, from this moment, my choices are going to shape what happens in the next. So we really want to help you think through, how do I make choices? How do I become active in my choices? Have I become passive with some of my choices? And how can I go ahead and perhaps change that for myself? So all of those things together are what we would consider the tool set or the mindset for the holy human. My goal for this video was to, I don't know, maybe give you enough to get going and inspired right now. And when you hear it like that, it probably gave you ideas of, ooh, I want to dig into. Great, run with it. Or maybe it got you curious and you want to learn more about one of the topics I said. So that's exactly why we've created the layers in the pages that you'll be able to see next. So when you get into the pages, let's say you wanted to learn more about thoughts, words, and actions. When you go there, you'll see a little video that will walk you through how to mentally deconstruct that. So I do that with you. And you can also read text about some definitions of here's what we mean by that. So you have those two for immediate engagement. And then as you scroll further and further down pages, if you're curious and you want to learn more, there's a video with a little bit more information. If you're wondering how people look at it and how they internalize it for themselves, we have conversation videos where we talk about them. So you'll notice that not only do we encourage choice through all the different tools we have, we really wanted to set this up around choice. What are you drawn to right now? What is it that you want to dig into next? I promise you, if you just trust in yourself and ask yourself the questions like, what's going on? Where do I need to go? And then you just allow for the answer, then I almost guarantee you will end up in the right place. So I am excited to wish you well upon the beginning of your journey, and I look forward to seeing your results as you move forward.